Hey friends, welcome to the podcast. Guys, I have redone this 3 times because I'm using my hands so much. Try not to be so annoying. Guys, this is the first day on YouTube. We're so pumped. Guys, this is not about getting this face or even Stadia out there. Like, that is not our goal, to be swarming the airwaves with this content, Stadia. It's all about making sure that we're getting our content of the stories, the encouragement, the other church planters who are sharing what is working, what's not, what they're learning, and sharing the encouragement that Jesus offers us. That's what this is all about. And YouTube is an incredible way. It's a search engine that increases our opportunity to get the information that people are looking for more quickly into their ears, the content into their lives, the resources of help and encouragement integrated into their world, and helping them know they're not alone. Guys, we exist to specifically help women who are in church planting all across the spectrum of upfront roles, behind the scene roles, wherever you may land. It creates a unique opportunity, church planting does, that can be something to celebrate, and it also can be something that is very challenging and can tend to tempt you to feel alone. But we want you to know that there are so many others out here, and we are trying to build this community who believe in healthy, growing, thriving, multiplying churches, and doing whatever we can to support that, and to educate, and to resource and encourage and tell the stories. That's how I primarily do that here, is telling stories. And we know that storytelling helps us not to feel alone, helps us kind of recharge, gives us fuel for our journey. And that's why we're here. So welcome. If this is your first time stumbling upon us, we pray that you will go back and listen to earlier episodes, but this is a great place to start. This is a longer intro than normal. I will not normally do this, but I just had to take the opportunity to say hello and to welcome you into this community of listeners if you're new, and to say, hey guys, you're going to get regular video content from here moving forward. If that's something that's helpful for you, to see the guests that we interview, to feel more like you're a part, or if you still choose to just listen, that's fine too. The primary reason for the video content on YouTube is to increase the searchability of the information we share and the stories that we tell. And that's it. It's as simple as that. And guys, I cannot think of a better guest for me today. Mike and I go way back. Mike Clear is with me today. We were in the class of 96 in college. And so, yeah, there are stories to tell, but that's for another time. But I want you to know that Mike was a founding pastor of Discovery Church in Simi Valley, California, where he served as the family ministries director. Mike joined the team at Orange, which many of you are familiar with, for their curriculum, their conferences. They're in just an incredible resource. He joined them in 2013, where he served as the director of life stage strategies for 10 years. He currently serves Orange in his new role as the senior vice president of business relations. Mike lives north of Atlanta with his amazing wife, Crystal, and their 2 amazing teenagers, Nash and Kennedy. We will talk some about them today, and just, it's a rich time together that is both fun, but it's going to be such important fuel and information and encouragement and inspiration for moving forward from here to do the work that we're called to do, guys. Reaching our kids and having spaces that are nimble and are pivoting toward what is here now, because really what's here now is already so very different from what you and I, if you grew up in the church, what that looked like. And then what we're moving toward is going to take even more flexibility and willingness to listen. And that's what we're talking about today. And I love it. And it's a great start for this next season of reach and involvement and building community here in this space. Thanks for joining us, guys. Here's my conversation with Mike. Well, Mike Clear, welcome to the Plant Strong podcast.
Hello, hello. How are you?
I'm great.
Awesome.
Guys, we are so pumped to have Mike here today. We go way back, class of 96. Whoop, whoop.
Way back in the time machine. It's a
Oh,
long time.
man. It is a
I
long
was like, oh,
time.
it's only been like 20 years. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm not doing my math right.
I
Carry the
know.
one. Oh gosh, like our 30 years coming up like in a couple years or something like that. And I was just like, ooh, man.
Ridiculous.
Yep,
We were just
ridiculous.
babies. We were
We were
child
babies.
geniuses. So we were in college early. That's what it was.
Yes, we were prodigies. They didn't know what to do with us. That's what
Yeah,
it is.
that is for sure.
That's right. That is
Oh,
true.
that's
That is true.
so good. So good. Yeah. So shout out. We were there when it was Roanoke Bible College. Now it's Mid-Atlantic Christian University. So whoop, shout out to the Mustangs. Previously the
Always
Flames.
always RBC and the Flames, but a shout out to the Mustangs as well. So
That's right. That's right. That's right.
yeah.
Oh man, good stuff. Well, Mike is a repeat guest, guys. So we'll put that on the notes. We'll link you back to a previous episode. We've had the privilege to talk to him again, but I was not the
You were
one
not
who got to
there.
interview. So
No, but it was Sarah.
that's
And so
right.
like full circle moment for you and I going back to college, but in talking with Sarah and Josh were, I think they were juniors in high school when I was at Southeast Christian Church as an intern. So like I knew them before they were the Burnett's, and they were just
Oh,
like
cool.
dating. And it was just like, once again, reminded of how short my life remains, the many years left. Cause
What
I'm
we've
just
got
like,
on the other side.
I'm talking to kids that were in, the youth group. And now you and I are here almost 30 years later from college. And I'm just like, okay, all right.
Yeah. Enough of that. Enough of
That's right.
that. Well, it does, though, tee us up beautifully for the conversation today. Because, guys, Mike and I are both so incredibly passionate about building churches and being intentional about churches that will reach the next generation, will partner with the next generation, will connect, will make them know beyond a shadow of a doubt it is their home, they are welcome, they are an integral part of. So that is what this is all about today. But before we jump in, I would love to give you a chance, Mike. We've got your bio, the more formal stuff in the intro, but I'd love to hear a little bit about, since our audience is primarily church planting people. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience with that and Orange, what that is all about with you and why you're here with us today.
Yeah, for sure. So when I graduated in the year of our Lord, 1996, I was in the Eastern North Carolina and Virginia area doing youth ministry and children's ministry. And I was always at churches. I know I was joking earlier about when we were at college, they didn't know what to do with us. I always felt like that in the church. Like I didn't grow up in the church, and so I didn't have a context or a frame of reference. I came to know Jesus when I was a junior in high school. So like, it was like, cool, I love this Jesus God. My senior year of high school, didn't know what I want to do with my life. And so that's where I ended up like, I want to know more about Jesus and everything. And I remember going to my first church that they, for whatever reason, paid me to come help out. I made so many mistakes. I'm so sorry for all those churches.
So sorry.
I'm so sorry. But it was a lot of traditional churches and back then, kind of a thing. And so, but I always felt like a square peg in a round hole. And I always felt like, what would it be like if you could just like start your own church? And man, back in 30 years ago, like the starting of your own church was just like it was just a concept that not many people were doing. And I never imagined in all my years that was going to be something that I wanted to do. But when I talked to Sarah on the previous podcast that I ended up at Southeast. Now I was already like 4 to 5 years into my full-time ministry career, if you will, not knowing what I was doing, learning. Cause like in our day, like right now with Christian colleges, they make you do an internship program as a part of your, you have to graduate. Back then, it was like, hey, if you want to do it, it'd be great, but you don't have to. And I was like, I won't. So I was learning on the fly, but I was just like, you know what? I need to hit the reset button and just go back. And I want to learn from like how do you, think about this, strategize this? How do you like implement this?
Mhm.
And I was always fascinated with like, how do you do this for the masses kind of a thing, kind of a deal. And so the Lord opened up an opportunity to go to Southeast Christian Church. And I was there as I think I was 28 or 29. And like the intern class that year, they were all like in college, straight out of college. And I'm like,
19.
yeah. And I'm like, I'm 10 years older than you guys. And they're like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, So I got an internship in the high school ministry with that. And my boss, the high school pastor, was Todd Clark at that time.
Wow.
And surrounded by a bunch of amazing people. Jim Bergen was like over family ministries. Michael Cass was over middle school ministry.
Casual, super casual.
I'm name dropping here. And so, but Todd, halfway through my internship year, he had decided he was resigning to go out to California, and he was going to start a church out there. And he was like, we're going to do something that's new, and we're going to do something that's, going to reach young families. And I was like, man, that sounds exciting. I would love to be a part of that. And I had some Orange, so the organization I work with right now, it was at its infancy stage back then. But I had kind of gone down to work to see what they were doing. And I was just like, man, this is this strategy to connect the home and the church and all this stuff. So I told Todd, I was like, you got to go see this, like it's amazing. So we went to Catalyst conference, and I know like Catalyst is not, but back then it was like, thing. And it was year 2 of Catalyst conference. That's how old, again, how I am to do that. And so I took him there for the conference itself, which is great, but I really took him there to kind of see the ins and outs of the infrastructure that they were developing for family ministry. And I remember we were sitting at a coffee shop. We came back from the conference. We were across the street from the church, and he sat down. He's like, hey, this is like in December, right? Because he was leaving, and the Catalyst conference was in October. And he was like, so when you finish your internship, I want you to pray about coming out to California and to help start a church. And I was like, okay, sure. And at that time I didn't know, like I was like, I'm going to stay here at Southeast, or I'm going to go do something different, whatever. Cause I'd never been to California, and I never started a church, didn't know how to, like, so all the things were just like, and I remember I finished out my internship year, and I had a couple offers from other churches to come, lead their student ministry, children's ministry and stuff. And I just couldn't shake like this opportunity to go out there, even though I had no idea what, how to do this, all this stuff. But I remember thinking, I was like, cause I would have been 29, almost 30 at this point. And I was like, I might go out there and we may completely bomb. Right. And so be it. But I would rather a decade from now look back and say, I'm so glad I went and tried it, as opposed to looking back and say, I wonder what would have happened if I made that jump and trusted God and went through all that. So needless to say, long story short, finished the internship, packed up all my belongings, which wasn't a lot, and I moved out to California and was the second hire for Discovery Church, what was then Discovery Church at that time, in Simi Valley, California. And I was there for 10 years and helped lead the family ministry department to take it from nothing to when I left. We had a kids ministry director, we had a student director. I was the family pastor, and it was great. It was a defining decade of who I am today to do that. So I'm forever grateful for my time there, and it was terrifying, and it was energizing, and it was all the things that church planners, like this whole audience, knows. You have all those feelings.
That's right.
And it was awesome. So
I love it. I thank you for sharing it, because I just think that helps our listeners connect. Every time we have somebody on who has, whether they're current or it's in their past, it helps you to feel like, okay, there's another person that understands the insanity at sometimes that church planning is. And I love when that was a part of your story, but then there was other things that God moved you into or out of, because it's just a reminder that it's just a flow, man. It's just God. It's staying in tune with Him. That's that's the important thing.
Yeah. I mean, my journey through that is where I met my wife, and we started our family out there. I got connected to relationships here at Orange that ultimately led me led me to where I am today. helping to influence churches across the country. But it all started with that yes, to say,
Love it.
Doesn't make sense, and I'm going to go. So yeah, and then I have to say, because this past weekend, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and church planners will understand this. And it's like you pour your heart and soul and blood, sweat, tears, all the things, resources, and everything into giving birth to the church. And it's not our church. Like, we completely understand that it's God's church to do that.
Right.
However, there's like a little piece of me in there, right?
That's right.
And Discovery went through. We were birthed out of Shepherd of the Hills Church, which is in Porter Ranch, so the next valley over. They helped give us funding, and they were kind of our mother church, which back then was, I don't know if they still do that these days or whatever, but back then, kids, there was a mother church.
Children,
they gave they gave you people and resources and stuff like that. And so when I eventually left and Todd left, and then you go through the cycle of the founding people leave and all that stuff. Sure. And Discovery Real Life Church, which is in Valencia. So Shepherd in the next valley started Discovery, but Shepherd also started Real Life Church in Valencia a couple years before Discovery. And so eventually Discovery went through a phase and had some struggles that Real Life Church stepped in, and Discovery Church became Real Life Church Simi Valley to do that. So, and I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, so some things changed. And now Real Life Church is handing it back to Shepherd of the Hill. So talk about a full circle moment. It's like They started this, they started Discovery and this and that. But there's part of me, I was just like, and now I think it's going to be called Shepherd Simi. I don't know, but I'm just like, Discovery, don't forget, just kind of like, don't forget RBC, kind of a thing. And I thought of you and Jeff, because I watched Vince's.
That's right.
That's right. Who is taking over their site?
The crossing. That's right.
And he watched that, and he was starting to tear up here and there. And I think when any church planner watched that, we all tear up at the same time.
Yes, sir.
We're there. We get it. And I thought of you and Jeff, and I was just like, I'm so happy for him. Like, the future is bright. But it's looking back at the past and celebrating. And
dude, I was there. I flew in, or I drove in with Maddie because I'd been moving her in, sobbing with both joy and a little bit of, but don't
forget. 100%. I'm so happy Shepherd's stepping in, because they're going to be able to do so many good things. But it's just like, but I'll be over in the corner crying. Just give me a moment. I'll be fine.
That's a great way to say it. Give me a moment. But I love that because, the people listening, their heads are rolling off their shoulders. They're shaking their head so hard because I don't think there's a way to do it passionately and with your full self and not have that. But then it's so good to be surrounded by people who are constantly in transition. It is a living, breathing entity. The church is not a static thing. And so we can all remind each other, hey, it's okay to cry in the corner. I'm going to look across the room at you and know that we both know. And then we'll celebrate and be the biggest cheerleaders moving forward. I love that.
Yep. So it's a defining chapter, however long you're at, wherever you're at, kind of a thing. And you give everything to it. You give your best, you give your worst, you give your everything, because that's what you have to do. Because it's like, there's no other sane person would go start a church if it was like, oh, I'm going to do this because I know what I'm doing. It's just kind of like, I'm trusting God and I'm just giving it all. And so anyways.
That's right. It's so good. It's so good. And I think what will keep you close to sane. I'm not going to say you're going to be sane through different seasons, but what's going to keep you close to sane is that connection with Jesus, that every day, underneath it all, through it all, faith that is living and active and breathing and morphing. And that is what we're going to talk about today. Like, what I know has carried me through the different iterations of ministry life. And I mean, it's just like, every place you are, you think, at least for me, I went into it thinking, I'm here till Jesus comes. They'll put me in a box from here. And then Jesus goes, oh, hey, that's cute. Let's shift you over here during this season. So what I want to dig in today to what Orange has learned, what you have learned, what you can share with us, because we've got so many tuning in who, whether they intended to or not, guess what? They lead the kids ministry in the first 18 months because they love kids, they're passionate
Right.
about the ministry, and they don't have any money to hire out yet. They're not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got others who have been in this for a long, long time and who are just eager to constantly look for ways to build into and invest in the next generation. So we've got it all across the spectrum. So I want to do a couple things.
Yep.
We're gonna work through some specific ideas, but I would love at the top of this for you to just give us a little brief snapshot of what the Orange One Day conferences are, because we're going to link to that later. And I just, any resource we can ever give our people, we're eager to do so.
Yeah. So if you don't know, because I don't think I talked like Orange, who we are at Orange, we are a nonprofit organization that helps influence those, that is all you listening here, who influence this next generation. And we believe that when the light of the church and the heart of the home, when they can work in unison and collaboration, we just think amazing things can happen with that. So we do our best to help influence churches through 3 different ways. We have a curriculum. So that's what we call our life stage curriculum. And we have a curriculum from preschool that is dedicated and focused on how preschoolers learn and how to help them understand how God made them, God loves them, and Jesus wants to be their friend forever. Then we have a curriculum for kids for elementary age and for preteen called 252 Kids and 252 Preteen. Then we have an XP3 student curriculum. We have one just for middle school and one just for high school. Why? Because middle schoolers are way different than high schoolers to do that. So we have a comprehensive curriculum from cradle to college to help with that. We also help influence leaders with through our Parent Q division. So our Parent Q division is simply that. We create resources galore to help churches connect with parents who attend their church, and even those parents who don't attend their church but are in their community and are looking for answers on how to help raise their kids to do that. So we do that through many different ways, through books and resources. It's Just a Phase book series that we have for every age group for kids, our free Parent Q app, Parent Q blog, Parent Q podcast, all sorts of free resources to help influence parents. And then what you mentioned is through our Orange Leaders. We believe anybody, you don't have to be an Orange leader and use Orange curriculum. You can be an Orange leader because you believe in the power of the church and home, working together. So we have tons of resources for that, from books to master classes, but also events. So we have an annual gathering every April here in Atlanta for thousands of people come together, and we have a 3-day conference around just the ideas of family ministry and what's going on in the church. But then in the fall, which is one of our favorite ones, because it's always nice to have the homecoming, if you will. I don't know if those are will happen anymore. I don't know. I'm showing my age here. So sorry. But that's when everybody comes home and we celebrate together. But then we go on the road in the fall, and we're going to 14 cities this year. And what we love about that is they're smaller, more intimate gatherings where we talk about the big ideas of what we're learning about, but then we also have practical content in our breakouts to do that. So there's smaller crowds able to connect with more people in your area as well, not just to get connected with Orange, but to connect with other churches. So that's where we're going to be talking about this idea of everyday faith and what that looks like, and how to give kids, students, how to help parents when it comes to this concept of faith and do that. So anyways, come to 14 cities. You can go to Orange Tour. I think it's orangetour.org or orangetour.com. I should know this. I don't know, but
it's fine. We'll link it. There you go. It'll be great. That's awesome. Yes. So, I've been tracking with Orange for well over a decade. And, one of the things I've just always appreciated so much, I am a visual. I need like pictures and I need images to help me learn and hold on to things. And you guys are so great at that. But sometimes the people that are great at more like the science data part leave the heart and the personhood out of it. And I think you guys do such a good job of making sure neither one gets lost in the other, so we're keeping a focus on what is changing, because we would be fools to not pay attention to that. But yet there's certain things that are never going to change. We always want to be seen. We always want to matter. And so I just really, I want to say that at the beginning, that I just deeply appreciate that about Orange. And I know your heart has poured into that for so long as well. So let's jump in. So what does that really mean when you say, helping the next generation develop an everyday faith? build an
Yeah.
everyday faith. What do you mean by that? I mean, I think our listeners are really sharp. So I think
Sure.
nobody's
100%.
going, what
Yeah.
is he saying with that?
Yeah.
But I'd love
Yeah.
to hear what your heart is and what you're seeing with that.
Yeah. I'm not about to give you a hot take, like new information you never heard before.
Right.
It's really a reminder, right? Because you got to remember, why we're doing this, why we're planting these new churches, why we're fighting for the next generation, and this whole everyday faith. I mean, it is that it's helping this next generation. And again, when I say next generation, like I'm thinking of my kids, right? So
Yes.
that's the context where I'm going to do. I have an almost 16-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter, and I have loved being a part of churches who are for the next generation, because my kids have been able to grow up in this and see that. So when I say next generation, I mean the whole, but I'm thinking through it just selfishly as a dad. And and again, this, I want their faith to be something that is simply that. It is an everyday component of their life, not something that is reserved just for a day, and not something that's just reserved for a holiday. And, this is the whole thing. Like my wife, Crystal, we have some Princess House dishes, which she got from her mom years ago, right? Mm-hmm. Princess House, it's all the thing. I had no idea to do that. So, but these are dishes we pull out at Thanksgiving and Christmas, and whenever mother-in-law comes to visit, kind of a thing to do that. And like this is like illustration wise, it's nothing new, but it's like I don't want them to liken their faith to be something that's just reserved for when we go to a building, or we go to a building on a certain day. That we want it to be something that helps just navigate everything. I mean, this is going back to Moses in Deuteronomy 6, where he's talking to everybody to impress these on your children. And when you walk along the road, and nobody really walks anymore. So when you drive along the road, and when you sit down to eat dinner at a table or through a fast food line, whatever it may be, and when you go to bed and when you wake up. And so it's those ideas of like, okay, how, and again, this is me as a dad talking, like I've always over the years, especially in these teenage years, which is like, okay, all right, there's a lot of that I do at home. I'm just like, okay, Jesus, take the wheel here, because I'm about to do something. But it's trying to say, okay, we, like at Orange, we would talk about it in the sense of how do you have an everyday faith? There are 4 faith skills, we would say. You can call them habits. You can call them, whatever you want to do, because skills are something that you practice at, right? If you want to get better at something, this is something that you try to incorporate every day. That I'm going to try to be a better whatever, I'm going to try to be more improve this. And so, it's the faith skills of hear. Okay, so like hear is like, how do you hear from God? And is that hearing from God from a preacher, right? Or pastor on Sunday mornings? Is it you're hearing from God from a podcast that you're listening to? Are you hearing from God from scripture that you are reading? Are you hearing from God when you are outside in nature? Are you hearing from God in a certain song that you may hear? Are you hearing from God from the people around? Like there's different ways that people connect and hear from God, but it's one of those things of helping my kids understand, like, you don't just hear from God on Sunday. Like God works in mysterious ways, and he works through so many different people and things around your life. And again, we just, we touched on it from the last 10 years of like, God worked in so many connection ways, and it's helping them understand that. And then there's pray. And again, I don't want my kids to know like prayer is not something that we just do when we sit down and eat, or it's not just something that you do at night. It's like it's a conversational thing that you're always in continual conversation with God. And it doesn't have to be a formalized thing. It's just a thing that, God, help me make the wise choice. God, help guide me. God, help me calm down. God, help me do that, whatever it may be. So again, it's helping them understand, developing this skill and this habit of how do I make conversational with God, to help them understand he's not some sort of person you just come to when you need something. That's not the role God plays in your life. Like it's just a constant conversation like you would with a best friend. And then there's talk about God. And this is how we talk about God, and not so much from an evangelistic standpoint, like, witnessing to your friends, but it's just like, how do you talk about your faith around the people that you have? Because when we are processing what we're learning, right? And this is why we would say small groups for kids is the hardest thing you'll ever do. But it's the most powerful thing that you'll do, because you're giving them a safe place or they can process their lives. They can process what God is. So when they're hearing from God and they're praying to God and they're going through some stuff, and they can talk about because when you're talking about what you're going through, it helps you grow, and it also helps the people around you who are in your circle to help them understand and grow as well. So it's like, okay, how are you talking about your faith and all that? So anyways, and then the last one is to live, which we would call worship, right? Like it's how are we living all this out kind of a thing. And again, worship isn't just about singing loud. Worship is all about living loud, is how we say it around here, kind of a deal. So it's like your faith without works and without actions, and how those things are being displayed and how you treat other people. So it's those faith skills that I, as a dad, try to strategically incorporate, and they're not beautiful, and they're not polished, but it's just like, okay, how can we talk? And it's also understanding my kids, right?
That's right.
So it's I understand that Nash conversationally with God will always say like, I'll pray. Yeah. Like I'll, whatever it is, or, Kennedy is my introvert, and she will not speak in front of other people to do that. Right. So it's like helping them know that just because doing these skills and making these a part of your life, they don't look the same for everybody, which is, I think, a trap that adults can fall into, especially students, and especially in our ministry sometimes. Like, we don't mean to be, but it's like, these faith skills look like this, and that you hear the conversation, you do a formal prayer, and then you do it. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So
yeah. No, that's exactly what I wanted, because that's just, I think sometimes it's the whole thing, you're like so close to it, you can't see it. And so it's like to pull back and be reminded, okay, this is the language around maybe what we should be conversing with our kids about, instead of feeling, because there's so much pressure and there's so many things that we're supposed to be doing. But if we can kind of boil it down and pull back a little bit. And I love what you mentioned about getting to know the kids, because I think that maybe is what I can see in my past, because I had an incredible upbringing in the church. I just did. I also fit a pretty specific personality type, way of learning, that made it pretty simple for me to buy into all of it. And so I think of friends that were growing up along with me who struggled, and I'm like, if I had been in their shoes, I think I would have struggled too. And again, it didn't take away from the intention and heart of those leading. But I would love for us to talk a bit about, what do you think, in a very non-judgment, like, this is not about tearing apart things that have worked for years in some contexts. It's just not about burning that down. But I do want to constantly be a part of a space of learning and admitting and growing. So what do you think that the church is getting right? And maybe where are we maybe missing the mark? Because you get to talk with a lot of people across the country and really across the world, I'm sure. And so maybe what's a couple things that would be helpful for our listeners for you to go, hey, this feels like a bit of a warning flag that maybe we're not getting this right, or we're getting it better than what it was, and this is what was wrong. And then what are we doing well?
Yeah. So let me reframe that in the sense of because the headspace that we're in right now is thinking about the future, right? And it feels like everything's changing again. I feel like the old guy back in my day, like kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But when we look to the future, some things are never going to change about the church, right? Like, there's always going to be, you go back to, like, there's always going to be an assembly of people. And I don't know what that looks like. And I don't know what day that is and what building that is, or what that, in a home, in a building, whatever kind of a deal. There's always going to be an element of God's word that's going to be shared and spoken. There's always going to be an element of worship. There's always going to be an element of service. But how those things are done are going to look dramatically different in the years to come. And what we're trying to figure out is, like, how can we come alongside the the church and resource them, not for what is happening right now. Because again, what's happening now is not, and it's not even downplaying what's happening right now. Like what's happening right now is great for some, but there's a whole generation out there that it's not going to work for them. This is going back to what I said earlier about understanding the difference of my kids. You know, they're 3 years apart, and those 3 years are a world of difference between those two, and just how they're growing up culturally, their friends and their personality and all that. So, so to kind of answer your question, I think in a different, I'll share with you some things that we're learning that I think will point to what the church is doing well, but some things that we need to you need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Does that work? Can we do that?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Reframe and re-say it, buddy.
Okay. So when we talk about the future, here's the uncomfortable and honest answer. Okay. Nobody knows. Right. So
dang it, Mike.
Nobody knows. I know, but here's the thing.
No, it's so good.
But here's what I would say. If you are at a church or if you're at a conference and somebody tells you, like, and here's the future, and I've seen it, like, I would suggest to you to get up, gather your belongings, and head out the door to do that, because it is going to be a time of experimentation, right? And we're going to have to try some things, and that's scary because, again, church planners, right? We have limited resources, we have limited time, we have limited volunteers, and so to the idea of like, keep doing what you're doing, but over here on the side, try some new things too, you know, kind of a thing. That's a hard thing to do. And again, I don't want to sit there and say like we have all the answers, but what we do have is data, right?
Yeah,
and what we have is some things that we're learning about that maybe suggest a path forward and a direction, as opposed to like, this is the way, kind of a thing, quoting the Mandalorian, if you will, kind of a thing. Like, we don't know what the way is, but here's some things to do that. So one thing I would say is that when we look to the future, more and more, I think what you're seeing is that it is decentralized. Okay. And here's what I mean by that. I think there's this stat we have that says 91% of 18 to 25-year-olds. So I know we're skewing higher here in the college age, but I think this all trickles down, into high school, middle school, and kids. 91% of 18 to 25-year-olds agree, and they say, I believe there is no such thing as mainstream pop culture anymore. Now, again, showing our age here, Lisa, back in our day, there was a mainstream pop culture that kind of like, this is the thing, this is the new, right? And
right. Back
when MTV played music videos, remember those, like pop cultural things, kind of a deal. Bad example, maybe, I don't know, but anything.
Crisscross. I'm just saying, crisscross.
Oh my gosh! I'm making it back, Daddy. All right, I'll make you want to jump. I love it. Okay. Anyways, that was a dark moment in my life back then, wearing my clothes backwards, but it had to be done. It had to be done back then. But everywhere in culture, we are moving from one large group way of thinking to individualized niche thinking, right? And you see this in our media. Like, remember back in the day when there was like, now again, this is like my parents' age, like when there were 3 channels, and this and that. And then in our day, there was cable, and there was like all these, but they were still like, man, this is where you got to get your sports, this is where you got to get your news, it might be true. And now it's like all these social media apps, and then all these different streaming services, and then YouTube, and like everybody's finding like, these are my people, and there's no more decentralized thing where I get all my information and my influence. And this goes for the church as well. And now it's becoming decentralized. And over 50% of the young people who said they were affiliated with a religious tradition also report having no trust with a religious centralized institution. Does that make sense? Do that?
Yeah.
So this means that over half our young people who claim to have a religious affiliation have little trust in a religious institution in which they identify. So what does that mean, right? Well, what it means is that if there's no more of the big system, it's now a relational thing, right? Because I'm finding my people, which means relational ministry, which is the hardest ministry. Let's just say that out loud, everybody on TV, right?
Yes.
But it's more important than ever going forward. And people have to become the priority. And we have to measure influence in people's lives over attendance, right? Again, attendance is easy to do because we check the box and this is how many we had. But when you're starting to measure influence in people's lives, that's different to do, right? So it's like engagement over attendance, influence over attendance. A collective footprint is better than square footage. Square footage says especially in student ministry world, how many did you have on Wednesday night or Sunday night or whenever you have your youth ministry gathering? A collective footprint mindset is like, we had one of our small group leaders, maybe they didn't make it, but they actually, the football game or the whatever game, the volleyball game, and they met with a couple students and they went out for, and had a great conversation. And that's an example of like, you can't fit that into like our programming, right?
Yeah.
You can't fit that into, but it's those in between conversations that are probably the most powerful that won't happen in your small group gathering when you have your large group communication centralized thing and then small groups. It will happen in between those things, right? So again, it's not saying get rid of this, but it's like we have to start thinking in different ways and rosters, so anyways, I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, totally.
The decentralization of that.
Good. I'm going to as you're speaking, I'm just going to interject with stuff that I'm thinking because this is so good. What I'm hearing you right now. Okay. That's not a new concept. Like when I was leading children's ministry, however many years ago, I was having that conversation because I was orange driven. We're talking about the small group leaders who then break out of the small group and go to the ball game or go to the thing. Okay. So now let's pull back in, since the majority of our listeners are going to be church planners. What the heck do we do, Mike, when we've started a church and I've got, Susie over here, who's quote unquote the kid's pastor, and she believes that 1000%. So is it that she needs to, like a paradigm shift, maybe not even a paradigm shift, because again, this has been a concept we've been talking about for a long time, but maybe it's a really pretty severe acknowledgement that, oh, my time, I've always wanted to pour into leaders, but more than ever, I need to be developing my volunteer leaders and giving them an inspiration and a calling to do those things. Does that feel right?
Yeah. I think that's a great practical step. And here's what I'd say in all this, because I don't want to like add stuff to like a church planner's list of already impossible things to do that. But this is where I would say relational ministry is the hardest ministry. And this goes back to, if I was starting over again, I would say my first priority would be telling the Bible story. It's great. But if you use Orange Curriculum, there's videos to do that. Okay. That will do them really well. Don't worry about that right now. Okay. And as far as like greeters and like safety stuff, you got to have all that. Worship singing. Man, there's dance moves videos that will engage kids more to do that. Don't worry about that. But we can, I fell into that thing, right? Because there's like, I got to have the best because we got to culturally draw people into here to get kids' attention. And you might catch the kids' attention 1 week by a video or whatever. But at some point, you're going to be lame on the media side. You just are. Embrace it to do that. What culture will never be able to compete with you is finding the right leader who can speak into a kid's life as their small group leader. So that's where I would say I would begin to focus my attention on finding that person, right? And not everybody's got to be a small group leader. I will probably tell you right now, I am a horrible small group leader. Okay. I'm fine on stage, put me on stage and I'm fine. My wife is a killer small group leader. Like, she's so relational. I'm so introverted. It's just whatever. So what I would then try to find is call them a coach, call them a whatever, but somebody who can oversee a group of small group leaders, like sell the vision, do what you like, explain what you're trying to do. And some people are like, man, I love that. And I love people. I just don't like kids. And like, you don't need to like kids. Like, I need you to invest in these people who are going to be with the kids to do that and to encourage. That way you're not having to do it yourself, because you don't need to go to all the ball games. You don't need to show up at all the stuff. You can't do that. You cannot, or you will flame out big time. So you start trying to figure out, like, how can I just start with one small group leader, like is the model small group leader, and then but at some point after you get 2 or 3 of them, find you a coach, find you somewhere in there who can then mentor those small group leaders to, pour into them, to do for them what you want them to do for the kids to do that. So again, that is, sometimes you're just like, I got to have a warm body who passes a background check, and who loves Jesus to get him in there to do that. I get that. I lived it. I've done it.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like, the standard for this, don't compromise it, you know, and to say we're going to only put the right people in there to do that. And again, I don't know what that means in your week to week thing, but it is the way forward in terms of connecting with kids. And I'm seeing this as a dad.
Yeah.
Like my kids go to a church that is slick on productions. And you know what? They
call it out. They do not care. Call it out.
And my daughter is having a hard time connecting with the people in her group and her leaders as well. Now, part of that's on my daughter because she is just going to be eternally shy and she's going to be a hard time. But I remember when she was in elementary in the small group, she had from first grade, second grade, third grade, 2 high school leaders. And I will say this, if you're looking for small group leaders, high school leaders are going to be a wonderful addition. Not without its challenges. Let me just say that up front.
Sure.
But Northie and Natalie were my daughter's small group leaders.
Yeah.
And they were sophomores and she was first grade. They stayed with her first grade, second grade, third grade. And we got to know them. They got to know us. They were into theater. So we would go to some of their shows at their high school to do that. And they would see each other here and there. My daughter thought that they were Taylor Swift, right?
Yes.
Like they were rock stars. And these girls would go on mission trips and they would ask us for money to like, hey, can you support us? You know, just like $25. And I was like, I'm not going to give you $25. I'm going to give you $100 because I am going to fund what you're doing for God because you are influencing my daughter and showing up for her. So like whatever you need. And if you're short, you come back to me and let me know and we can figure this out. Like I am for people who are for my kids to do that.
That's right.
COVID hit and our church shut down for about a year to do that. Natalie and Norley graduated and went off to college. So when she came back and our church started meeting again, my daughter's now in 5th grade and she walked into a room full of strangers and she did not go during her 5th grade year. And that has carried over into high school or to middle school now. She's in 7th grade. So our middle school, 6th, 7th and 8th year.
Sure.
And it's tough. And I'm just like, but it comes back. And again, the people who are leading the group, I'm sure very nice people to do that.
Of course.
But there's not a connection there and again, you're not going to make every kid happy. I get that. This is me speaking for my daughter, but it's just, again, you couldn't ask for a slicker production at the church I attend. Like,
yes.
Well done, guys.
Yes.
And my daughter doesn't care. Right. So,
So this is so helpful. Yes. Good. No, what I'm hearing you, I want to just really ask our listeners to lean in on this because this is such a passion for me and I will always be a kids pastor in my heart. Like always, that's just going to always be what lights me up. And I am feeling, I don't want people to miss this because this is a big shift because for those of us of a certain age and older, it's just program driven because we believed and it did serve a purpose, like to draw them into that moment. And we can't have not the moment. We can't not have the moment because we need the Bible cracked open in a communal setting. Like that's important. But guys, if we shift our focus and give ourselves the freedom to do like a video, I'm not even like, I love Orange and I'm never going to apologize for that, but I'm not promoting Orange for you to have to get Orange, but something that is taking the pressure off of using all your resources to be poured into that Sunday morning.
100%. And I would even say, if you don't want to use our stuff, Life churches out there, they give away free stuff. There's there's quality videos and worship stuff to take the pressure off of, I have to fill a worship leader, worship team, dance team, a communicator, and a host. Like those may come. I'm not saying you don't ever do those live. Yes. But if I'm starting, there's no reason to start with that because that's not going to be the thing that connects with kids. It's going to be the people who help them process what they heard in the video, what they heard in the song, what this means in your life, showing up for them week after week as consistently as possible on Sundays, but then also trying to figure out how do they show up outside of Sundays to do that. And that's just not what is easier to do is to go find a Bible storyteller and to find somebody who can sing and do a worship song. That's easy. Check, 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 kind of a thing. But again, relational ministry is hard. However, if you're paying attention to culture, the centralized institution with religion, pop culture, this one thing, speaks for everybody. It is crumbling before our eyes to do that. And it's going to segmented groups, and everybody's finding their lane, and they're finding their people to do that. And so we as a church can pay attention to that and to say, we want to help be a part of the people that do that, but that's not going to come necessarily from your programming. It's going to be that relational thing. So that's one thing. I would say the other thing I would say is that experiential is a thing that is out there. So this will probably swing back more to the programming side because you cannot not have a program, right? Like if you show up at a church and be like, what are you doing for your children's ministry? And you're like, we're just relational here. We just want to hang out all the time, and it's like, yeah, but what time do y'all meet? So it's like, what time do my kids go to? So I understand that, but
yeah,
experiential learning is the process of learning through experience. It's defined as learning through reflection on doing its hands-on learning. So it's all that. So experiential can be seen, it can be touched, it can be verified, and all that stuff. So what that means for us as church planners and as children's ministry leaders and youth pastors, whatever, is that if experiential is how kids are processing and learning stuff, right? And it doesn't just come from knowing, it comes from actually doing something with it. What that means for us then is like, maybe it's going to be less monologue, which is me talking to you from a stage, and it's going to be more dialogue, which can happen from a stage, but it's going to happen more effectively where? In small group time, in that relational component, right? Interest span is different than attention span, right? Because we can sit here and talk about attention spans of a kid, and you've only got takes minutes to gain a kid's attention, but it takes seconds to lose it, right? And you may never get it back. True, unless you're also leaning into what they're interested in, right? Now, no kid's going to be interested in, no kid's going to be like, tell me more about this Moses, kind of a thing like deal. But it's like figuring out how are we going to talk about something in a way that can get at their interest, that they're leaning in a little bit more to do that. That makes sense to do that. Transformation is going to be better than information, right? Again, how do you measure that? We can talk about that, and unpack that, but it's like, here's an example where I think the church I think you said earlier, it's like missing the mark or whatever. Again, not judgmental thing, but it's like, transformation is better than information. And because we know we have a limited amount of time with kids, especially elementary age, right? We have 4 or 5 years with them to do that. And that's if they come, they come now once a month, maybe twice a month is the new every Sunday, right?
That's right. Right.
And we are like, we're going to go through the Bible every year from kindergarten to 5th grade. So by the time they leave, they're going to know most of the Bible. And really, what they're probably going to remember of most of all is none of that, right? Because they show up sporadically. And when they show up in the Old Testament, New Testament, so instead of like information dumping and forcing it in there, it's like, okay, what are some transformational stuff? Like, what are the things that we want them to know by the time they leave in 5th grade? And maybe not everything, but what are the 5 or the 10 transformational things that we can lay the groundwork on now, plant the seed, if you will, and watch it grow while they're with us to a degree that we can then hand off to the student ministry area, that they will continue to cultivate that and do that. And so it's just, again, it's a different way of thinking in that, as far as not just information dumping on people to do that. Again, we've hit on this. Personal is going to be better than overproduced. Again, I love production. I will always be for production. I am a stage guy, right? But I understand while it has influence, its influence is much more limited than what the personal connection can make to do that. So, but even again, if I'm the production guy to my Bible storyteller, if I'm at that phase of my church plant where I have a live storyteller, right? And I would be like, hey, this story, your goal is not to tell the best story that you can possibly tell. Your goal is to tell the story in a way that sets up small group time so that they will be able to win in that. That's a different way of framing it to do that, right?
Yes.
And then service is better than butts and seats, right? So again, it's experiential kind of a thing, right? So again, it's like there's room for information, but then what am I supposed to do with that, and creating opportunities for kids, for students to be able to experience that. as opposed to, again, it's shifting your way of thinking. And I know there are some churches out there now, there's a church plant here down in Roswell. I think like once a month or once every 2 months, they don't meet on Sundays and they go out into the community instead as a church, and they do a service project as a way of like, again, living this out of experiential to do that. So again, it's what are we supposed to do with that? It's that, how can we rearrange our current programming? Again, this isn't saying get rid of your programming, but how can we rearrange some things that helps us have a more experiential kind of a slant to what we're doing. This is where I would say family experiences as well. That's where, environments, not all the time, but maybe around the holidays, like Christmas time. I don't know about your family, but we're always looking for something to do together as a family. How can we create an experience for parents and kids to have that together? So anyways,
so good.
Experiential is one of the things. The other thing, and again, this is new information, authentic. Is the future. And that is honesty, transparency, accountability, humility. And 84% of young people say being authentic is an all-important value. That is not Christians speaking, that's just young people in general. And 83% of those young people trust someone who take action to fix things when they have caused harm to do that. And 80% of those young people trust someone who admits when they are wrong. And so the church is not without its blemishes and its mistakes, but we keep showing up, right? And that's the beauty of the church, is that we keep showing up to do that. So as leaders, it's one of those things of us showing up and having that spirit of humility, a posture, if you will, a posture of humility, a posture of always learning, and a mindset that is on growth. And I think what you mentioned that is like, I'm always open to learning what needs to change, what needs to grow, and I'm going to make mistakes along the way. And when I do, I'm going to apologize, or I'm going to fix things to do that. But it's that posture that is going to be super important, especially to this next generation, right? To do that. So again, that's something that's not like, hey, here's one more thing to add to your list. It's just like, hey, when you're trying to recruit your leaders, again, we're not just looking for anybody to step into our children's ministry or our student ministry. We're looking for people who are going to be able to connect and show up. We're also looking for people who model this posture of what we're trying to do: humility, mindset, growth, learning, and all that to do that. So, and then I would say diversity. Going forward. And this isn't just diversity ethnically, though that's part of it, right? This is diversity in theology, which is a little touchy subject. Diversity in family structure, and diversity in economics as well, right? And Gen Alpha, the generation kids pastors are working with now, is more likely to grow up in diverse communities and have more exposure to different cultures, different languages, and different backgrounds. They're the most diverse generation in U.S. history. Like that's just their world. You don't have to talk to them about, hey, do you have diverse friends? It's like, look at my friends. Like they're from every part of the world.
That's right.
They're here to do that. So again, as leaders, we can, again, if we talked about as far as what we talked about earlier, as far as authentic, being honest. So it's like, the posture of humility, the posture of learning. This is a posture or a practice of curiosity, right? Because it's like, I grew up in Wichita, Kansas as a kid until I was 12 and went to an all white school, right? And then my stepdad got transferred to Norfolk, Virginia. And then I went to a predominantly African-American school, and I was just like, okay, so it's like, what's going on? So, but it's that we have to have that practice of proximity, the practice of curiosity, and the practice of humility when you're entering into this, like, what does diversity look like going forward in our ministries in the future to do that? So what do I mean by that is like, again, to your leaders, or if we're talking Bible story people, or even videos, if you're going to show videos, let me just say this right. This is a great opportunity to make sure you find videos that acknowledge diversity and that it's not just one. It's not a single personality that represents, your ministry, but it's a cast, you know what I'm saying? To make so it's like
Yeah.
to do that. So again, videos. If you're gonna like, I'm gonna focus on volunteers and getting the relational piece right, but I'm gonna find some videos. Don't go find videos with just one with one ethnic on there. Like it's
Yes.
good.
Yes.
And we try really hard here to make sure that we're trying to represent in that as well to do that. So and even not just like on stage or like in front of kids, but it's also decision makers, right?
Yes.
People behind the scenes, like making decisions for your ministry, like and as you're building out your team, of coaches, and or we're going to make a decision about this. It's like getting as many people as you can around the table of different thoughts and diversity and ethnically and theology and all that. So I don't know if that makes sense or not. I'm
It
just speaking
totally
here.
does.
So
And what I love about what you're sharing this morning, because guys, we talked about this prior to in prepping for today. Mike and I will never be in a space that we don't think about how overwhelmed church planners are. Like that's a running loop in my mind, that we don't want to come in here and give you a to-do list. But what you have shared is not a to-do list, it's to frame list. It's like you're already doing these things that we haven't really shared anything today that's like, whoa, I never thought of a small group leader. Of course you've thought of a small group leader, but are you investing the bulk of your resources toward them or toward the Sunday morning programming by people? Is that where your sweat equity is going? And it's like, maybe shift that, turn that dial a little bit. We didn't give you a whole new task. We're just like, this is the grid to think through as you're planning, as you're being intentional. And I just think it's super helpful what you've been sharing today. And I did want to circle back really quick to your, what Kennedy, her people, her high school leaders. I have said that to so many church planters. I'm like, and even as not a church planter, but a person who's attending, who's like a part, slide a $20 bill to your small group leader who happens to be a teenager or a college student. It would be the best $20, $50, $100 you ever spent. Will it sometimes not? Like, are they going to make mistakes? You better believe it. But that is it. That's the context right there. It's who your kids are looking to and what it does for that student leader. This has been a better predictor of long-term involvement in the church is when your high schoolers and middle schoolers are serving. And so that's just a little plug that I've learned from as a mom of a 22 and a 20-year-old. That is truth time and time again.
So to follow up on that, so Kennedy's having a hard time connecting with her small group right now. And man, we were trying everything of like, have your friends spend the night, and if your friends spend the night, well, you could take them. Yeah, I'll take them. Like, okay, well, we're going to have sleepover Saturdays, to do that, whatever. Right. So, last month, because she doesn't go to her small group time, so she comes into service with me and my wife to do that, which is like, oh, this is not for you. She's like, oh, I listen. I'm like, yes, this isn't designed for you. You don't know what I know. So I talked to her one day after church and I was like, hey, so like, would you be interested maybe every other week we go serve you and I in the preschool ministry? Because like she loves kids, like she loves little kids to do that. And so where our church is at, high schoolers can serve in there by themselves, but if you're middle school, you have to serve with a parent in there to do that. So I was like, I'm game for that. Would you do that? And she's like, yeah, okay. So we went to an orientation meeting this past Sunday and we sat in there and went through the whole thing. And you know who else was in the room with us? There's me and Kennedy, and there was 3, 4, 5, 6 other people in addition to us. And they were all, not all, hang on, 6. 5 of them were high school students, and one was a middle school student with his mom behind him to do that. And I looked around and I was like, gosh, I'm old, right? But I was just thinking like, this is amazing. Like I was just like, these kids are going to be so, and then we walked around the ministry and, there's a combination of adults, but just to see, I'm glad we're at a church that values the next generation serving to do that. And again, it's not easy and there's all sorts of hoops to jump through and all that. But again, if my daughter is like, if this is going to help connect your faith in the everyday, because how you experience God and how you live it out is going to be different than your brother. It's going to be different than your mom. It's going to be different than me. I need you to find your own path so that this isn't my faith is your faith. It's no, this is your faith. That's so right. What's going to work for you And if this is something that's going to do that, then let's do it. And we'll do this for your middle school years. And if you want to keep going after that and do something different, then gosh, man, if this is like embedded in you, like as you leave home, like
Yes,
that's a
sir.
win. That's a
Yes,
win,
sir.
you know?
Yes.
So,
It's huge.
yeah,
It's huge.
but yes.
And guys, find encouragement with that. These are
Yeah.
two people who professionally have served in ministry for a lot of years. And our kids, like it needs to be real. And so there is no formula. The closest thing I can think to a formula is to give them opportunities to serve and connect.
Yeah.
And so, I hope that provides encouragement to you as listeners out there, and that it can be encouragement to those you're serving with. Like this is just what it's about, a bigger conversation. So, Mike, I could talk for weeks with you about all of this because it is truly the thing that lights me up, probably more than anything. But obviously we have a limited amount of time. So as we're closing out today, because I'm going to really encourage our listeners, like we're going to do our best to like flesh out notes in our notes portion, but like listen to this thing again and share it with your people, because we want to learn from those who are learning. And that's what Orange does. That's what Orange exists to do. But as we're closing out today, is there something that you haven't had an opportunity to share that you really feel like, before we go, I want to make sure I say this?
Yeah. Keep showing up. Like that is, I will say two things. That is the main thing. Again, I still believe, despite all of its blemishes and all of its history, and there's a lot of bad church history that we're just gonna, and I don't think we should just like, let's not talk about it. You should talk about it. You know why? Because that's going to help with this generation. Because right now they have a mistrust with the centralized religion.
Authentic.
And so we do not shy away from very tough, very awkward, and don't be afraid to say, I don't know, man. Like, and all the best we can do is moving forward, and we can take what we've learned from history and try not to repeat that. And when we do mess up and when there are stumbles, that's when you're a posture of humility and a posture of learning and a posture of transparency, and just say, I'm sorry, to do that. I still believe the church is the hope of the world. Like I believe that.
Yeah.
And I think, but it's going to have to adjust. And this isn't like, oh, the cultural tides are sweeping the church into a direction. It's like, no, you've got to pay attention to what's happening around you in your communities, to do that. And you've already done that because you've identified the community you're in, because a certain percentage don't know Jesus, and there was something that drew you to that community.
Yeah.
And so, but you're going in there knowing that they're probably not going to trust you. Like that's not new information to you. So it's just keep showing up. It's going to be hard. Keep doing the hard work that you need to do. And again, I do hope that the things that we talked about today, it's again, nothing revolutionary, because that's just not me, but it's reminding and reframing these things to say, think about this. And then I would probably say one more thing in that is that, with the future, what I love about Orange, it helps us and it hurts us. Let me just be honest with this. Okay. We work with 80 different denominations, I think, that use our curriculum to do that, which means, Lisa, we do not agree on everything. Okay. But what we do is we stack hands on a handful of things. We call them our 9 core insights that, we believe, that God, Jesus is God's son, that God sent Jesus in this world, and he lived, he was a real guy, born of a virgin, and he died on the cross to forgive us of our sins, and he rose 3 days later. He has power. Like everybody agree, stacking hands? Great. We can work together on that, right? Yeah. And you're going to find out when you're working with churches in your community, because you're going to have to, to think like there's one centralized, one church in your community that's going to like save the valley or save the whole city or save the suburb or whatever. And it's like, you're going to have to lock arms with other churches to do impactful things to reach your community and feed like what a community-wide initiative, this and that. Like, just don't be so, it's got to be culturally, we're entering, have been in the season. It's this or that. It's pick a side, man, on whatever issue you are in. And it's just like, I don't think that's how Jesus did it. And he had a way of bringing both sides into the middle to find a different way and a better way. And I always love Orange because it's taking two things that traditionally, historically were opposite. Like the family came to church to drop off the kids, to fix them, to do that. And we bring them back. It's like, no, you both are going to come into the middle and you're going to work together. And so I just think, I don't know if that's helpful, but I just think that
Yes.
we've got it. Like my talking about my kid, my daughter Kennedy just turned 13. And so that's when she got her phone, because she was the only middle school in all the world that never had a phone up until
Preach
then.
it. We were there.
Yeah. So, but we've had some conversations about, like, screen time hours and, this and that. And we've had some challenges with Kennedy, because she is our social media whiz, and my son doesn't care about anything with that. But my wife, we had a conversation, a loud conversation a couple weeks ago. And she was frustrated with all, because she doesn't get technology and this and that. And my daughter, I can't remember what the issue was, but the solution was like, no more phone. No, like, it was like the absolute extreme of like, everything's been taken away. You can't do this. And I was just like, and I was in the middle to be like, okay, hold on a second, right?
Right.
Let me hear what you have to say. Let me hear what you have to say, and try to find the commonalities that we're trying. Like, there's no limitation. No, there is. Like, she can't download stuff without us asking permission.
Right.
She didn't get a phone until she was 13. We have her passcode to check her phone. I follow her on all her social media. Like, there's stuff in there, but so I'm saying all that as a parent and I say it as the church. And when you engage this next generation, there are issues galore out there, and there's not just one, but it's just, and again, this isn't me. It's like, I don't know if I'm making sense. I'm blabbing right now. I'm sorry.
You're making total sense.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
That's just important. That
it is.
There's secondary issues, and I'm not saying that they're not important, but they're not worth.
Yes.
Jesus is most important, right?
That's right. I literally had this conversation with Vince at Verve this weekend that we were talking, and it's just like, it is this shift that if we're not intentional, we're going to be, the voices are just not going to be there. There's going to be no one speaking of Jesus and his place in our life, because we've done either or this or that, instead of having almost like a translator, like someone to bridge in the middle. That's at least, we still may not have all the answers, and we won't. You won't. Other than that it's Jesus, but we don't know how that's going to play out. 100%. But we can be willing. I think more than ever, the church has got to be willing to enter in spaces that feel tricky and no clear answers, and be that relational piece, which is what you've talked about this whole time. Yep. And it goes for students, it goes for kids, it goes for adults, it goes for us grandparents. Old people.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
that's right.
Oh man, Mike, it's so helpful. Like this is exactly what I hoped for our time today. And I know it's going to be such an encouragement to our listeners. Thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to be here and to share. So thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Plant Strong podcast. Plant Strong is part of the Stadia podcast network. To find more great podcasts and to see how Stadia can help you start thriving, growing, multiplying churches for the next generation, be sure to check out stadia.org/podcasts.